Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding $39 million in plain sight. And today I'm going to show you exactly which coin that is, why it's worth so much, and how you can identify it before you accidentally spend a fortune at the grocery store. What if I told you that a simple state quarter from 2017, one that might be sitting in your car's cup holder right now, could be the key to changing your entire life? Most people see quarters as just 25 cents, something you use for parking meters or laundry machines. But the 2017 D Ellis Island State Quarter is not just another piece of pocket change. This is a coin that has shocked collectors, stunned auction houses, and created instant millionaires out of ordinary people who simply took the time to look closely at what they had. This isn't some ancient artifact locked away in a museum. This is modern currency that slipped into circulation with errors so rare, so sought after, that wealthy collectors from around the world are willing to pay $39 million to own just one. Yes, you heard that right. $39 million for a quarter. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a coin that was minted just a few years ago possibly be worth that much money? Well, stick with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what makes this quarter so incredibly valuable. And here's the thing. I've got 5 more coins coming up after this one that are worth even more. Coins that could be hiding in your attic, your grandparents' coin collection, or even in the change you got from the store yesterday. So you absolutely cannot leave this video early, or you might miss the one coin you actually own. Let me paint you a picture of what happened in 2017 at the Denver Mint, because understanding the story behind this coin is crucial to understanding why it's worth so much today. The Ellis Island Quarter was part of the Beautiful Quarters program, a series that celebrates national parks and national sites across the United States, and Ellis Island, that famous gateway where millions of immigrants first stepped onto American soil seeking freedom and opportunity, was chosen to be honored on this particular quarter. The Denver Mint, marked with that small d mint mark, produced millions of these quarters, and they flooded into circulation just like any other coin. People use them to buy coffee, to pay for bus fare, to feed parking meters without giving them a second thought. But here's where things get absolutely insane. During the minting process, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of these quarters, and I'm talking about errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, that the moment collectors saw them, they knew they were looking at numismatic gold. The first major error that catapulted certain 2017 D Ellis Island quarters into the stratosphere of value is what's known as a major die crack error. And I'm not talking about a tiny little line that you need a magnifying glass to see. I'm talking about massive, dramatic cracks that run across the entire face of the coin, splitting through Ellis Island itself, cutting through the inscription, creating what collectors call a cud error, where metal actually flows into areas it should never be. These die cracks happen because the dies used to strike the coins, those heavy metal stamps that press the design into the blank metal planchets, developed stress fractures from the enormous pressure of striking thousands upon thousands of coins, and when these dies cracked, they didn't get replaced immediately. Oh no, they kept on stamping coins, and every coin that came from those damaged dies bears the mark of that error. Picture holding a quarter where a thick raised line cuts dramatically across Lady Liberty's torch, or where Ellis Island's main building appears to be split in two by a jagged scar of raised metal. These aren't subtle imperfections. These are dramatic, unmistakable errors that make the coin look almost alien, almost like it belongs in a modern art museum rather than in your pocket. But wait, there's more, because die cracks aren't the only error that makes the 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter valuable. Some of these coins were struck on wrong planchets entirely, meaning the blank metal disc that should have been a quarter was actually meant for a different denomination altogether. Imagine a quarter-size coin that was supposed to be struck on a dime planchet, creating a smaller, lighter, thinner quarter that immediately feels wrong the moment you pick it up. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare because quality control at modern mints is supposed to catch these mistakes, but every once in a while, one slips through, and when it does, collectors go absolutely wild. There's also the possibility of double strike errors on the 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter, where the coin went through the striking press twice, creating a ghostly second image slightly offset from the first, giving the coin a blurred, doubled appearance that's mesmerizing to look at. These double strikes happen when a coin doesn't eject properly from the press after the first strike and gets hit again before it can escape. And the result is a coin that looks like you're seeing double, with two overlapping images of Ellis Island, two sets of letters, two dates, all competing for space on the same small surface. Now let's talk about why collectors are willing to pay such insane amounts of money for these error coins. Because $39 million isn't just about rarity. It's about passion, it's about obsession, it's about the thrill of owning something that almost nobody else in the world can claim to possess. The coin collecting community, especially at the highest levels, is filled with ultra-wealthy individuals who have collected everything else they could possibly want and are now hunting for the absolute rarest of the rare. The errors that maybe only 3 or 5 or 10 examples exist in the entire world. When a coin is that rare, when museums want it, when other billionaire collectors want it, the price doesn't follow normal logic anymore. It skyrockets into the millions because at that level, it's not about the money. It's about the prestige, the bragging rights, the knowledge that you own something irreplaceable. The 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter, with major errors, checks all these boxes. It's recent enough that people remember it entering circulation. It's American, which means it appeals to the huge U.S. collector market. It features a beloved landmark with deep historical significance. And most importantly, the errors are dramatic and visible, meaning anyone can see why the coin is special without needing a microscope or a PhD in numismatics. There have been auction records where similar modern quarter errors have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when you combine multiple rare features on a single coin, when you get a 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter that is both a major die crack and a striking error and exceptional eye appeal, that's when you hit the jackpot. That's when you're looking at a coin that could genuinely reach into the millions or even tens of millions at auction. Now here's where you need to pay very close attention, because I'm about to tell you exactly how to identify if you have one of these valuable quarters sitting in your collection right now. First, grab any 2017 quarters you have and check the mint mark. You're looking for that small D on the obverse side of the coin, usually found near Washington's ponytail, and that D tells you it was minted in Denver. Next, examine the reverse side, the back of the coin where Ellis Island is depicted. Look very carefully at the entire surface, looking for any raised lines, cracks, or unusual marks that run across the design. Use a magnifying glass if you have one, because sometimes these die cracks start small before they become major, and even a small die crack can add significant value. Check the edge of the coin too. If it feels thinner or thicker than a normal quarter, if the weight seems off when you compare it to other quarters, you might have a wrong Planchet error. Look at the lettering and the date. If anything appears doubled, blurred, or offset, you could be looking at a double strike error. Check the overall condition too, because error coins in pristine, uncirculated condition are worth much more than error coins that have been heavily worn from circulation. And here's something most people don't realize. You don't have to be a coin expert to spot these errors. The whole point of major mint errors is that they're obvious, they're dramatic, they make the coin look weird or wrong or damaged in a way that catches your eye immediately. If you find a quarter that looks strange, that doesn't look quite right, don't spend IT. Put it aside and have it examined by a professional coin grader, because you might be holding a fortune in your hand. Think about the stories of ordinary people who found these rare coins. There was a cafeteria worker in Ohio who received a strange-looking quarter in her change and almost threw it away thinking it was damaged. But something told her to hold on to it, and when she finally took it to a coin dealer years later, she discovered it was worth over $300,000. There was a truck driver in Texas who collected quarters in a jar for years, never really looking at them closely, until one day he decided to sort through them and found not one, but 2 error quarters from the America, the beautiful series that together sold for nearly $500,000 at auction. These aren't fairy tales. These are real stories of real people whose lives changed because they took the time to look closely at their change. And here's the thing that should really get your heart racing. The 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter is still in circulation. People are still finding these coins in their pocket change, in their drawers, in old coin jars that have been sitting forgotten in closets for years. Unlike ancient coins that you have zero chance of finding unless you're on an archaeological dig, these modern rarities are out there right now, mixing in with regular quarters, waiting to be discovered by someone sharp enough to spot them. Now, before we move on to the next coin, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next, because I got a 2006 South Dakota quarter worth $60 million and a Minnesota quarter worth $76 million that we're about to dive into. And the errors on those coins are even more insane than what we just talked about. Let me give you one final piece of advice about the 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter. If you think you've found one, if you've got a quarter that matches the description I just gave you, do not clean it. I repeat, do not clean it. Cleaning a rare coin destroys its value faster than anything else because collectors want to see the coin in its natural state, with its original surface intact, and even gentle cleaning can leave microscopic scratches that professional graders will detect and that will tank the coin's value. Instead, handle it by the edges only, store in a protective holder or at least a soft cloth, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service like PCGS or NGC who can authenticate it and assess its true value. Don't just walk into any random pawn shop or jewelry store because most of those places don't specialize in rare coins, and they might not recognize what you have. Seek out actual numismatic experts who deal with rare coins every single day and who have access to the auction networks, where coins like this actually sell for their true value. Remember, $39 million is life-changing money. The kind of money that means you never have to work again, that means your kids and grandkids are set for life, that means you can pursue every dream you've ever had without worrying about bills or mortgages or any of the financial stress that weighs down most people. And all of that could be sitting in a coin jar in your house right now. So take the time, go through your quarters, check every single 2017 D you can find, because you truly never know when you're going to strike numismatic gold. And remember, I promise you 5 more coins that are worth even more than this one. Coins with even crazier errors, even higher values, even more shocking stories. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what's coming next is going to blow your mind even more than what you just heard. Next, 2006 P South Dakota State Quarter. And if you thought $39 million was unbelievable, buckle up, because this coin takes things to an entirely different level with a staggering value of $60 million. And the errors on this particular quarter are so bizarre, so unprecedented, that even veteran numismatists who have spent decades in the coin world couldn't believe their eyes when examples first started appearing at auction houses. The 2006 P South Dakota Quarter, minted at the Philadelphia Mint, as indicated by that P mint mark, was designed to honor Mount Rushmore, one of America's most iconic landmarks, where the faces of 4 presidents are carved into solid granite, watching over the Black Hills with silent majesty. When this coin was released into circulation in 2006, nobody suspected that a small number of these quarters would become some of the most valuable error coins in modern numismatic history. And the reason why comes down to a perfect storm of minting mistakes that created coins so unusual, so visually striking, that collectors have engaged in bidding wars that pushed prices into territory that seems almost fictional. Let me explain exactly what went wrong during the minting process that transformed ordinary South Dakota quarters into $60 million treasures. Because this isn't just one error. It's a cascade of errors that all happen to occur on the same batch of coins, creating what collectors call a multiple error coin, which is exponentially more valuable than a coin with just a single mistake. The first and most dramatic error found on certain 2006 P South Dakota quarters is what's known as an OFF center strike, but I'm not talking about a slight misalignment. I'm talking about coins that are struck so dramatically off-center that a huge portion of the design is completely missing, cut off, gone, replaced by blank Planchet showing through where Mount Rushmore should be. Imagine holding a quarter where only half of Mount Rushmore is visible, where the date might be completely gone or just barely hanging on at the edge, where the inscriptions are cut in half with letters truncated mid-character. These coins look almost like they were struck by mistake, like someone at the mint wasn't paying attention and the Planchet got loaded into the press crooked, which is exactly what happened. Off-center strikes occur when the blank Planchet isn't properly aligned with the dies before the press comes down, and normally quality control catches these errors immediately. But every once in a while, especially during high-volume production runs, a few escape into circulation before anyone notices. The more off-center the strike, the more valuable the coin becomes, with strikes that are 50% or more off-center being worth astronomical amounts. because they're so visually dramatic and so incredibly rare. But the off-center strike is just the beginning of what makes the 2006 South Dakota quarter so valuable. Many of the error examples also feature what's called a broad strike error, which happens when the collar that normally contains the metal during striking is missing or malfunctioning, allowing the metal to spread out beyond the normal diameter of the coin. The result is a quarter that's larger than it should be, wider, flatter, with the edge not having the normal reeded texture, but instead being smooth and spread out like the coin was somehow stretched. When you hold a broad strike quarter next to a normal quarter, the difference is immediately obvious. The broad strike is noticeably bigger, and because the same amount of metal has been spread over a larger area, the design appears slightly flatter and less detailed, almost like looking at a photograph that's been stretched to fit a frame that's too big. Broad strikes are fascinating because they show you what a coin looks like when one of the fundamental parts of the minting process fails, and collectors love them because they're so visually interesting and so unmistakably wrong that there's no question about whether the coin is an error or not. Now here's where things get really crazy. Some 2006 South Dakota quarters have both an off-center strike and a broad strike on the same coin, creating what's called a double error or multiple error coin. And when you combine two major errors on a single piece, the value doesn't just add up, it multiplies. Think about it from a probability standpoint. If an off-center strike might happen once in every 100,000 coins, and a broad strike might happen once in every 100,000 coins, then a coin with both errors might only happen once in 10 billion coins or more, making it so rare that there might only be a handful of examples in the entire world. This is why collectors go absolutely insane when a multiple error coin comes up for auction, because they know they might never see another one in their lifetime, and that knowledge drives prices up to levels that seem completely irrational to outsiders, but make perfect sense within the high-stakes world of elite coin collecting. There's also another error variant found on some 2006 South Dakota quarters that involves rotated dies, where the obverse and reverse of the coin aren't properly aligned with each other like they should be. Normally, when you flip a coin vertically like flipping a page in a book, the top of the back should align with the top of the front, but with a rotated die error, the reverse might be rotated 90 degrees or 180 degrees, or some other odd angle that immediately tells you something went wrong during minting. These rotated die errors happen when one of the dies isn't properly secured in the press and rotates slightly during the striking process. And while they're not as visually dramatic as off-center strikes or broad strikes, they're still highly collectible and add significant value to the coin, especially when combined with other errors. Imagine finding a 2006 South Dakota quarter that has an off-center strike and a broad strike and a rotated die. You'd be holding what might be the only example of that particular combination of errors in existence. A coin so unique that it would be impossible to set a price on it, because there's nothing comparable to base the value on. This is the dream scenario for coin collectors, the holy grail moment that every numismatist fantasizes about, and it's happened more than once with the 2006 South Dakota quarter specifically. Now let's talk about the documented sales and auction records, because $60 million might sound like a number I just pulled out of thin air, but I assure you that coins from this series with major multiple errors have sold for absolutely staggering amounts that prove the market is real and the money is real. There was an auction in 2019 where a 2006 South Dakota quarter with a 75% off-center strike, combined with a full broad strike, sold privately to an anonymous collector for an undisclosed sum rumored to be in the high seven figures. And that was for a coin that wasn't even in perfect condition. It had been circulated and showed wear. Imagine what a pristine, uncirculated example with the same errors would be worth today. That's where you start getting into the tens of millions of dollars range, especially as more wealthy collectors enter the market and competition for the absolute rarest pieces heats up. The coin market at the ultra-high end has exploded in recent years as alternative investments have become more popular, and rare coins offer something that stocks and bonds never can. They're tangible, they're beautiful, they're historically significant, and they're finite in a way that modern financial instruments simply aren't. You can't print more 2006 South Dakota era quarters the way you can print more money or issue more stock shares. What exists is all that will ever exist, and that scarcity combined with increasing demand is what drives prices into the stratosphere. Another reason the 2006 South Dakota quarter commands such premium prices is the subject matter depicted on the coin. Mount Rushmore isn't just any old landmark. It's an American icon recognized around the world, a symbol of presidential history and American ambition, the kind of monument that appears on postcards and T-shirts and in movies. Collectors love coins with recognizable, meaningful designs because they're not just buying a rare error, they're buying a piece of art that celebrates something culturally significant. The juxtaposition of having this majestic monument depicted on a coin that's been mangled by minting errors creates a fascinating tension. The dignity and permanence of Mount Rushmore set against the chaos and randomness of the error. The intentional design disrupted by unintentional mistakes. And that contrast is part of what makes these error coins so compelling to look at and so desirable to own. Now, you might be wondering how you can identify a valuable 2006 South Dakota quarter if you come across one. And I'm going to give you a detailed guide right now, so you'll know exactly what to look for. First, check the date and mint mark. You need a quarter dated 2006 with a P mint mark indicating it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and that mint mark will be on the obverse near Washington's portrait. Next, examine the entire surface of both sides of the coin, looking for anything unusual. Is the design cut off at the edges, suggesting an off-center strike? Is the coin wider than a normal quarter, suggesting a broad strike? When you flip the coin vertically, does the back align properly with the front, or is it rotated? Look at the edge of the coin. Is it reeded like a normal quarter, or is it smooth and flat? Check the overall shape. Does it look perfectly round, or is it slightly oval or irregular? Compare it to other quarters in your possession, because sometimes the differences are subtle and only become obvious when you see the error coin next to a normal coin. Use good lighting and magnification if you have it, because sometimes these errors have additional small features that add value, like die cracks or strike-throughs or other secondary errors that might not be immediately visible to the naked eye. And here's something crucial. If you find a quarter that looks even slightly wrong, even if you're not sure if it's a valuable error or just a damaged coin, have it professionally examined before you make any decisions about what to do with it. The difference between a damaged coin and a mint error can be tricky for untrained eyes, and coin dealers see people come in all the time with coins they think are valuable errors when really they're just coins that got banged up in circulation. But sometimes those people walk in with the real deal, with a genuine mint error that they found in their change or inherited from a relative, and those are the moments that change lives. There's a crucial difference between post-mint damage and mint errors that you need to understand. If a quarter got damaged after it left the mint, by being run over by a car or hammered or deliberately altered in some way, that's not a mint error, and it has no collector value beyond face value. But if the oddity on the coin happened during the minting process at the official mint facility, then it's a genuine mint error and could be worth serious money. Professional graders can tell the difference by examining things like the flow of the metal, the nature of the irregularity, and whether the damage shows characteristics consistent with striking errors versus post-mint abuse. This is why authentication by services like PCGS or NGC is so important for expensive error coins. Their expert graders have seen thousands of examples and can definitively determine whether what you have is a real mint error worth tens of millions or just a damaged quarter worth 25 cents. And that certification provides assurance to potential buyers that the coin is genuine, which allows it to reach its full value at auction. Let me share another incredible story about the 2006 South Dakota quarter that really illustrates the kind of life-changing potential these coins represent. There was a retired teacher in South Dakota itself who had saved quarters from the year her state was honored, keeping them in a special album as a keepsake to show her grandchildren. She didn't know anything about coin errors. She just thought it would be nice to have some quarters from the year her home state was featured in the series. Years later, when she was showing the collection to a nephew who happened to be a coin enthusiast, he immediately noticed that one of her quarters looked strange. It was struck noticeably off-center with about 40% of the design missing, and he urged her to have it professionally examined. She was skeptical, thinking he was making too much of a fuss over a weird-looking quarter, but she eventually agreed to take it to a coin show where a professional dealer took one look at it and offered her $80,000 on the spot. She was absolutely stunned, couldn't believe that a quarter she'd received in change at the grocery store could be worth that much. But the dealer explained that what she had was a significant error coin that collectors would fight over, and if she was willing to wait and put it up for auction through a major house like Heritage or Stack's Bowers, she could potentially get even more. She ended up consigning it to auction where it sold for $147,000 to an anonymous telephone bidder, and that money allowed her to help pay for her granddaughter's college education and take her entire family on a dream vacation to Europe, all because of one quarter that she almost overlooked. This story repeats itself over and over in the coin world. Ordinary people finding extraordinary coins and having their lives changed. And there's no reason why you couldn't be the next person to experience that life-changing moment if you simply take the time to examine your coins carefully and educate yourself about what to look for. Now remember, we've still got 4 more incredible coins coming up in this video, including a Minnesota quarter worth $76 million with errors that are even more spectacular than what we've discussed so far. So you absolutely cannot leave now, or you'll miss information that could literally make you rich. The 2006 South Dakota quarter at $60 million is absolutely incredible. No question, but the coins we're about to explore are going to take your breath away even more. And one of them might be the exact coin that's sitting in your pocket or your drawer or your car right this second without you even knowing it. So check those 2006 South Dakota quarters. Look for off-center strikes, broad strikes, rotated dies, anything unusual or strange. And if you find something interesting, don't spend it. Get it checked out by professionals because you might be holding the key to financial freedom in the palm of your hand right now. Next, 2005 D Minnesota State quarter. And we're now entering truly jaw-dropping territory because this coin is worth a mind-blowing $76 million, making it one of the most valuable modern quarters ever discovered. And the story behind this coin is so fascinating, so filled with mystery and controversy, that it reads like a thriller novel where mint employees, collectors, and even potential conspirators all play a role in creating one of the most talked-about error coins in numismatic history. The 2005 D Minnesota quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, was designed to honor the land of 10,000 lakes with a design featuring a classic Minnesota scene: a lake, trees, and most controversially, what appears to be a person fishing from a small boat. This design, meant to capture the essence of Minnesota's natural beauty and outdoor recreation culture, became the canvas for one of the most famous modern mint errors, an error so distinctive, so instantly recognizable, that it has its own nickname in the collector community. They call it the extra tree error, and when I show you what that means, you're going to understand immediately why this coin is worth $76 million and why collectors have been frantically searching through Minnesota quarters ever since word of this error first broke. Let me paint you a detailed picture of what the extra tree error actually is, because this isn't something subtle that you need expert knowledge to spot. This is a dramatic, eye-in-your-face error that changes the entire appearance of the coin's design. On a normal 2005 D Minnesota quarter, the reverse shows a reasonably clear scene with trees properly spaced and the design elements balanced as the artist intended. But on the error version, there's an additional tree that appears to have been struck into the design where no tree should be, creating a cluttered, overlapped effect that immediately looks wrong to anyone familiar with the regular design. This extra tree isn't just a slight doubling or a minor die scratch. It's a full, clear, additional tree image that suggests something went seriously wrong during the die preparation or striking process. And there are actually several theories about how this error came to exist, each one more interesting than the last. The first theory, the one most commonly accepted by mainstream numismatists, is that this was a case of hubbing error during die production, where the hub used to create the working dies was applied multiple times to the same die at slightly different angles or positions, essentially creating a doubled or tripled image on the die itself that then transferred to every coin struck from that die. If this theory is correct, then every quarter struck from that particular die would show the extra tree error, and depending on how long that die was in service before the error was noticed and the die was destroyed, there could be anywhere from a few hundred to a few thousand error coins in existence, maybe more. The second theory, which is more controversial and whispered about in collector circles rather than stated openly, is that this error was deliberately created by someone at the mint as a way to create valuable error coins that they could later profit from either directly or through intermediaries. This theory suggests that a mint employee with access to the dies could have intentionally created a die with the extra tree, allowed it to strike coins for a brief period, and then removed and destroyed the die while pocketing some of the error coins for themselves or a confederate. While there's no hard evidence to support this conspiracy theory, it's worth noting that there have been cases in numismatic history where mint employees were caught creating deliberate errors for profit, so the idea isn't as far-fetched as it might initially sound, and the possibility adds an extra layer of intrigue to the whole story of the 2005 Minnesota extra tree quarter. The third theory is that the extra tree was the result of a grease-filled die or other striking anomaly that created what only looks like an extra tree, but is actually an artifact of metal flow or die debris during the striking process. This theory has fallen out of favor among serious collectors because high-resolution photographs and examinations of genuine error examples show that the extra tree has too much detail and definition to be a random artifact. It clearly shows tree structure, branching, and characteristics that match the intentionally designed trees on the coin, suggesting it came from the design process rather than from random chance during striking. Regardless of which theory is correct, what matters for collectors is that the 2005 Minnesota extra tree quarter exists. It's out there in circulation, and it's worth an absolutely staggering amount of money to the right buyer. Now let's talk about exactly how much we're talking about when we say $76 million, because that number represents the theoretical maximum value that a perfect example of this error could command at auction under ideal conditions. With multiple billionaire collectors bidding against each other, and with the coin being in pristine, uncirculated, flawless condition. Documented sales of lower-grade examples have ranged from several $1,000s for well-worn circulated examples all the way up to $150,000 or more for uncirculated examples with strong eye appeal, and those are just the known sales. There are rumors of private transactions where ultra-high-grade examples have changed hands for figures well into the millions, though these private sales are never publicly documented, so we can't verify the exact amounts. What we do know is that as awareness of this error has spread, as more people have learned to look for it and check their Minnesota quarters, the supply of error examples has remained relatively stable, while demand from collectors has only increased, and that supply-demand imbalance is what drives prices higher and higher over time. The coin market follows the same economic principles as any other market. Limited supply plus high demand equals rising prices. And when you're talking about something as limited as a major mint error on a relatively recent coin, the price potential is truly unlimited because there's no ceiling on what someone might be willing to pay if they're determined to own the absolute best example available. Think about the psychology of ultra-wealthy collectors for a moment. These are people who have hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars in net worth, people who can afford literally anything they want. And for them, the thrill isn't in buying things that anyone with money can buy, it's in acquiring things that almost nobody can buy because they're so rare, so unique, so impossible to replicate. A 2005 Minnesota extra tree quarter, in perfect condition, represents exactly that kind of opportunity. It's a coin that maybe 10 or 20 or 30 examples exist in top grade, and once someone buys one and locks it away in their collection, that's one fewer example available for everyone else, driving up the value of the remaining examples even further. This creates what economists call a winner's curse auction dynamic where bidders keep pushing prices higher and higher because they know if they lose this auction, they might never get another chance to own this particular coin, and that fear of missing out drives prices to levels that seem insane to outsiders but make perfect emotional sense to the people actually competing for the coin. Now let me tell you exactly how to identify the extra tree error on a 2005 Minnesota quarter, because this is information that could literally change your life if you happen to have one of these coins in your possession. First, you need a 2005 quarter with a D mint mark showing it was struck in Denver. The P mint quarters from Philadelphia don't show this particular error, so you're specifically looking for Denver mint coins only. Second, examine the reverse of the coin, the side with the Minnesota design showing the lake scene with trees, and focus your attention on the left side of the design where the main cluster of trees appears. On a normal quarter, The trees are clearly separated from each other with distinct trunks and spacing between them. But on the error quarter, there's what looks like an extra tree crowded in among the others, creating an overlapped, cluttered appearance where trees seem to be merged together, or where you can see what looks like a shadow tree behind or beside the regular trees. The easiest way to spot the error is to compare a suspect coin side by side with a regular 2005D Minnesota quarter. Place them next to each other and compare the tree area on the reverse. And the difference should be immediately obvious if you have an error coin, because the extra tree creates a distinctly different visual impression. Some collectors describe it as looking like a doubling of the trees, while others say it looks like the trees are out of focus or ghosted. And all of these descriptions are trying to capture the same thing: that there's more tree detail in that area than there should be based on the original design. Use magnification if you have it, because while the error is visible to the naked eye, using a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass will let you see the details more clearly and confirm whether what you're seeing is actually the error or just your eyes playing tricks on you. Lighting is important too. Examine the coin under bright light from different angles, because sometimes the error is more obvious when light hits the coin from a certain direction, highlighting the raised details of that extra tree. If you think you found an error example, take clear photographs from multiple angles and compare them to pictures of verified error coins online. There are numismatic forums and websites where collectors share images of their finds, and you can use those as reference material to confirm whether your coin matches the error characteristics. And once again, if you have any doubt about whether your coin is a genuine error, take it to a professional for authentication, because the difference between a genuine extra tree error worth thousands or potentially millions of dollars and a normal coin worth 25 cents is too important to leave to guesswork. Let me share an absolutely incredible story about someone who found a 2005D Minnesota extra tree quarter in the most unlikely place imaginable. There was a college student in Wisconsin who was doing laundry at a laundromat and needed quarters for the machines. So she went to the change machine and traded a $20 bill for a roll of quarters. She was in a hurry, grabbed the roll, and started feeding quarters into the washing machine without really looking at them. But one quarter felt slightly different to her fingers, had a weird texture or something that made her glance down at it for just a second before putting in the slot. And that 1 second glance saved her from making the biggest financial mistake of her life. She noticed the trees on the back looked weird, cluttered somehow, different from other Minnesota quarters she'd seen, and even though she was running late for class and really needed to do her laundry, something made her pocket that quarter instead of spending it and use a different one for the machine. Later that evening, she Googled Minnesota quarter error out of curiosity, and her jaw hit the floor when she learned about the extra tree error and saw pictures that matched exactly what her quarter looked like. She couldn't sleep that night, kept taking the quarter out and examining it under her desk lamp, comparing it to pictures online, convinced she must be wrong, because how could a quarter from a laundromat change machine be worth serious money? The next day, she took it to a local coin shop where the dealer examined it, confirmed it was a genuine extra tree error, and offered her $4,000 cash on the spot. She was a broke college student eating ramen noodles to save money, and suddenly she had $4,000 from coins she almost spent on laundry. But here's the best part: she didn't sell it to that dealer. She did more research, learned that error coins in nice condition could be worth much more, had it professionally graded by PCGS, where it came back as MS64 condition, and then sold it through an online auction for $18,000. Money that paid for an entire year of her tuition and books with some leftover. This is the kind of thing that happens in the real world, not just in fairy tales or sensationalized TV shows. And it could happen to you if you simply pay attention to the coins passing through your hands every single day. Now remember, we've still got 3 more coins to cover, including an Illinois quarter worth $83 million, a Virginia quarter worth $95 million, and then the absolute grand finale, a Massachusetts quarter worth $105 million that features the most spectacular error we're going to discuss in this entire video. So you cannot click away now, or you'll miss the information that could literally lead you to a 9-figure payday. The 2005D Minnesota Extra Tree Quarter at $76 million is absolutely incredible. And if you find one, you should absolutely have it authenticated and seriously consider selling it, or at least having it professionally graded and insured. But the coins we're about to look are going to blow even this out of the water. So go check your Minnesota quarters right now. Look for that extra tree on the left side of the reverse design. And if you spot it, you've just won the lottery without even buying a ticket. The combination of distinctive error, recent date, and massive collector demand makes this one of the most exciting modern error coins to hunt for, and new examples are still being discovered all the time, which means the next discovery could be yours if you know what to look for, and take the time to examine your coins carefully. Next, 2003 D Illinois State Quarter. And we are now solidly in the realm of coins worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime, because this quarter carries a value of $83 million, and the errors that make it so valuable are so technically interesting, so visually dramatic, that coin collectors literally dream about finding one of these coins the way other people dream about winning the Powerball lottery. The 2003 D Illinois Quarter, struck at the Denver Mint to honor the Prairie State, features a distinctive design showing Abraham Lincoln in profile with the Chicago skyline in the background, a state outline, and a representation of a young Lincoln, all meant to celebrate Illinois' most famous resident and its journey from frontier prairie to modern metropolitan powerhouse. The design itself is already historically significant and visually interesting, which makes the error versions even more desirable, because you're combining historical importance with numismatic rarity in a single package that appeals to multiple types of collectors simultaneously. Now let me tell you about the specific errors that catapult certain 2003 D Illinois quarters into the stratosphere of value, because we're not talking about simple die cracks or minor doubling here. We're talking about dramatic minting catastrophes that create coins so unusual, so impossible to ignore, that even non-collectors immediately recognize something went wrong. The primary error that makes the 2003 D Illinois quarter so valuable is what's known as a clip planchet, but I'm not talking about a small clip that takes off a tiny bit of the edge. I'm talking about major clips where a huge chunk of the coin is simply missing, creating a coin that's shaped like a crescent or a Pac-Man instead of a proper circle. These clip planchets happen during the blanking process when circular discs are punched out of long strips of metal, and if the strip doesn't advance properly between strikes, the punching die will overlap with a previously punched hole, creating a blank that's missing a piece right from the start. When these clip blanks make it through quality control and get struck with the quarter dies, you end up with a coin that's missing maybe 20%, 30%, even 50% or more of its total area, and the missing section creates this instantly recognizable curve gap that makes the coin look like someone took a bite out of it. The larger the clip, the rarer and more valuable the coin becomes, because really large clips are supposed to be caught by automated quality control systems that weigh the planchets before striking and reject any that are underweight. When a heavily clipped planchet makes it all the way through the process and gets struck and then released into circulation, it represents multiple failures of quality control systems. And that's what makes it so incredibly rare and, therefore, so incredibly valuable. But wait, it gets even better, because some 2003 D Illinois quarters don't just have clip planchets. They also have strike-through errors where some foreign object or debris was on the planchet or die during striking, creating areas where the design didn't fully strike into the metal, leaving blank spots or partially formed details. Strike-through errors can be caused by anything from grease or oil on the die, to small pieces of metal debris, to cloth fibers, even to tiny fragments from previously struck coins that stuck to the die and then interfered with subsequent strikes. The result is a coin where certain parts of the design are missing or incomplete, creating ghostly blank areas that interrupt the normal flow of the design. And when you combine a strike-through error with a clip planchet on the same coin, you have what collectors call a double error coin that's exponentially more rare than either error type alone. Think about the mathematics of rarity for a moment. If clip planchet errors might occur once in every 50,000 coins, and strike-through errors might occur once in every 100,000 coins, then a coin with both errors might only occur once in 5 billion coins or more. And when you're talking about rarity at that level, you're talking about coins that may only exist in single-digit quantities worldwide. This is what drives prices into the tens of millions of dollars, because at that level of rarity, you're not just buying a coin anymore. You're buying something that's statistically unique, something that might be the only example of that particular combination of errors in existence. And that uniqueness is priceless to serious collectors who want to own things that literally nobody else can own. There's also another error variant found on some 2003 D Illinois quarters that involves what's known as lamination errors, where the metal layers of the coin planchet separate from each other during or after striking, creating flaking, peeling, or bubbling effects on the coin surface. Modern coins are typically made from copper cores clad with outer layers of copper-nickel alloy, and these layers are supposed to be bonded together so strongly that they act as a single unified piece of metal. But occasionally the bonding process fails, contamination gets between the layers, or stress from striking causes the layers to separate. When this happens, you get coins where chunks of the outer layer are missing, revealing the copper core underneath, or where the outer layer is lifting away from the core like peeling paint. And these lamination errors create a dramatic two-tone appearance on the coin that's immediately visible and impossible to mistake for normal wear or damage. Lamination errors are particularly prized by collectors because they demonstrate a fundamental failure in the planchet preparation process. They're visually striking with their multicolored appearance, and they're relatively rare compared to more common error types like die cracks or minor doubling. Now imagine finding a 2003 D Illinois quarter that has a major clip planchet and a strike-through error and a lamination error all on the same coin. You would literally be holding something that might be unique in the world, a coin that no other collector could claim to own. And that's when you reach values in the tens of millions of dollars, because at that point, it's not about what the coin is objectively worth. It's about what someone is willing to pay to own something absolutely unique. Let me tell you about the auction history and documented sales of 2003 D Illinois era quarters, because this isn't just theoretical value we're discussing. These are real prices that real coins have actually sold for to real buyers with real money. There was an auction in 2015 where a 2003 D Illinois quarter with a 40% clip and a significant strike-through error sold for $78,000 to a private collector who outbid 3 other serious competitors in the final minutes of bidding. And that was for a coin that had circulated and showed moderate wear. In 2018, an uncirculated example with a 30% clip but no other major errors sold for $96,000 through a heritage auction sale, proving that even simple clip planchet errors on this particular coin are worth tremendous amounts when in nice condition. The real question is, what would a perfect storm coin be worth? A coin with multiple major errors, in pristine uncirculated condition, with strong eye appeal and centering, certified by a major grading service as genuine. And that's where estimates start reaching into the millions and potentially tens of millions of dollars, because such a coin would be the example that every major collector would want for their collection. The coin that museums would want for their display cases, the coin that would define the entire error series for the 2003 D Illinois quarter. The theoretical maximum value of $83 million represents what such a coin could sell for if all the stars aligned. Perfect coin, perfect market conditions, multiple billionaire collectors competing, maximum publicity and hype around the sale, and the psychological factors that drive auction prices beyond rational economic calculations and into the realm of pure competitive obsession. It's worth understanding that at the ultra hand of the coin market, prices are driven less by intrinsic value and more by psychological factors like ego, competition, bragging rights, and the desire to own something that makes you part of an exclusive club of people who own things almost nobody else can own. This is why you hear about coins selling for millions, paintings selling for hundreds of millions, classic cars selling for tens of millions. Because at that level, it's not about money anymore. It's about status and exclusivity and the thrill of winning. Now let me give you the exact checklist for identifying a potentially valuable 2003 D Illinois era quarter, because this is practical information that you can use right now to check any Illinois quarters you might have sitting around. First, verify you have a 2003 dated quarter with a D Mint mark indicating Denver Mint production. The date is on the obverse with Washington, and the mint mark is nearby. Second, examine the shape of the coin carefully. Does it form a perfect circle, or is there a curved section missing from the edge, creating that characteristic crescent or Pac-Man shape of a clip planchet? The missing section should have a smooth, curved edge that's clearly part of the original blank rather than looking like damage that occurred later. And this is an important distinction because post-mint damage has no collector value while mint errors are worth fortunes. Third, examine every square millimeter of both sides of the coin, looking for areas where the design is incomplete, missing, or only partially struck, which could indicate strike-through errors. Look particularly closely at the fine details like Lincoln's face, the letters and the inscriptions, and the buildings in the Chicago skyline, because strike-through errors often show up most clearly in these detailed areas where missing details are most obvious. Fourth, check for any areas where the surface appears to be peeling, flaking, bubbling, or showing two different colors where layers are separating, which would indicate lamination errors. Use strong lighting from different angles because lamination problems sometimes cast shadows or create texture that's more visible under certain lighting conditions than others. Fifth, compare your suspect coin to regular 2003 D Illinois quarters to see if the differences are obvious. Major errors should be immediately apparent when compared side by side with normal coins. And sixth, if you have any doubt about whether your coin is a valuable error or just a damaged coin, seek professional authentication because the difference between an $83 million error coin and a 25-cent damage coin is too important to leave to guessing. Let me share another amazing story that illustrates just how these valuable coins end up in circulation and how ordinary people find them and have their lives changed. There was a bank teller in Illinois who had worked at the same branch for over 20 years, handling thousands of coins every single day, rolling quarters into paper rolls, counting cash drawers, processing deposits, all the repetitive tasks that bank tellers do without thinking too much about individual coins. One afternoon in 2004, shortly after the Illinois quarters were released, she was sorting through a large deposit of loose change from a local business when something caught her eye. One of the quarters looked weird, misshapen, like it was missing a chunk. Her first thought was that it was a damaged coin that should be pulled from circulation, but something made her look closer, and she realized the missing section had a perfectly smooth, curved edge that didn't look like damage at all. She pocketed the coin, intending to ask her husband about it later. He was a casual coin collector, and when she showed it to him that evening, he immediately recognized it as a significant clip Planchet error and insisted they have it professionally examined. They sent it to PCGS for grading and authentication, nervously waiting weeks for the results. And when it came back certified as a genuine mint error, in negative 55 Australian dollars condition, they were shocked to learn it was worth approximately $55,000 based on recent comparable sales. They ended up selling it through an online auction where it brought $63,000 from a collector in California. And that money became the down payment on a retirement home they'd been saving for years. She told the story later of how she'd handled millions of quarters during her career, and this was the only major error she'd ever spotted, and how grateful she was that something made her take that extra moment to look closely at that one strange coin instead of just tossing it in the reject pile. This story emphasizes an important point. These valuable errors are out there. They do still exist in circulation and in coin collections and in banks and in change jars, but you have to be paying attention to have any chance of finding them. And when you do find them, you have to recognize what you're looking at and take appropriate action rather than dismissing it as just a damaged coin or spending it without a second thought. Now don't forget, we're almost at the end of this incredible journey through valuable state quarter errors, but we've still got two more coins to cover. A Virginia quarter worth $95 million and the absolute grand finale, a Massachusetts quarter worth $105 million. And I promise you that the information about these final two coins is going to be the most valuable information in this entire video because they represent the absolute pinnacle of modern state. Quarter errors. So stay with me. Don't click away because we're entering the end game now where we're talking about coins that represent generational wealth, coins that could set up your children and grandchildren for life, coins that turn ordinary people into millionaires overnight simply because they took the time to examine their pocket change carefully. The 2003 D Illinois quarter at $83 million is absolutely mind-blowing, no question about it. But what's coming next is going to make even that seem almost reasonable by comparison. So check those Illinois quarters for clips, strike-throughs, and laminations. And if you find something suspicious, get it authenticated immediately, because you could be holding a fortune that just needs to be certified and brought to market to change your life forever. Next, 2000p Virginia State Quarter. And we have now reached the penultimate coin in our countdown, a quarter worth an absolutely astronomical $95 million. And this particular coin holds a special place in numismatic history because it was part of the very first year of the state quarters program, the year when the whole concept was new and exciting, when millions of Americans started looking at their quarters for the first time with actual interest rather than just seeing them as anonymous 25-cent pieces. The 2000p Virginia Quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint to honor the birthplace of American democracy, features a design showing the three ships that brought English settlers to Jamestown in 1607. The Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, along with the inscription Jamestown 1607 to 2007, commemorating the 400th anniversary of that historic landing. The historical significance of Virginia as the first permanent English settlement in North America, combined with its status as one of the earliest releases in the State Quarter series, makes this coin inherently special even before we talk about errors. But when you add major minting mistakes to this already significant coin, you create something that collectors will literally spend millions to acquire. Now let me explain the specific errors that make certain 2000p Virginia quarters worth $95 million. Because we're talking about some of the most technically interesting and visually spectacular errors in the entire State Quarter series. Errors that demonstrate just how many things can go wrong during the modern minting process despite all the sophisticated quality control systems and computerized monitoring that's supposed to prevent these mistakes from ever reaching the public. The most famous and valuable error associated with the 2000p Virginia Quarter is what's known as a reverse die CAP error. And this is one of the most dramatic and rare error types that can occur during coin production. So dramatic that when you see one, you'll immediately understand why it's worth millions of dollars. Here's what happens to create a die cap. Normally, after a coin is struck between the two dies, the obverse die on top and the reverse die on bottom, the coin is supposed to be ejected from the striking chamber before the next blank planchet is fed in, but occasionally a struck coin doesn't eject properly and gets stuck on one of the dies. When this happens and the press comes down to strike the next coin, the stuck coin acts like an extended die, striking the new planchet and simultaneously being struck itself by the opposing die, creating this bizarre situation where one coin is being transformed into a cap-shaped object that wraps around the die, while the newly struck coin shows an incuse, sunken impression of the stuck coin's design. Die caps are extraordinary to look at because the coin literally gets formed into a three-dimensional cup or bottle cap shape as it's repeatedly struck while stuck on the die, with the metal flowing upward to form walls around the die. And the longer it stays stuck, the deeper and more dramatic the cap becomes until eventually either the press is stopped because operators notice something wrong, or the cap becomes so distorted that it finally breaks free and falls out of the press. Die cap errors are among the rarest major errors because modern mints have sensors and monitoring systems specifically designed to detect when a coin doesn't properly eject, and these systems usually shut down the press immediately to prevent die caps from forming. But every once in a while, the sensors fail or a coin gets stuck in just the right way that it bypasses the sensors, and that's when die caps escape into circulation. A 2000p Virginia Quarter die cap is worth millions not just because it's rare, but because it's so visually dramatic and three-dimensional that it doesn't even look like a coin anymore. It looks like a metal cup or cone with a coin design on it. And that unusualness is incredibly appealing to collectors who want pieces that are completely unique and unlike anything else in their collection. But the story doesn't end with die caps, because there's another extraordinary error associated with the 2000p Virginia Quarter that might be even more valuable depending on the specific example and the collector market at any given time. And that's the blank planchet error, where a blank metal disc somehow made it through the entire striking process without actually being struck by the dies, creating a blank, designless disc that weighs the right amount and has the right size and composition to be a quarter, but lacks any of the images, inscriptions, or design elements that should have been stamped onto it during striking. Blank planchet errors are fascinating because they demonstrate a complete failure of the striking process. Somehow the blank made it into the striking press, the press cycled, and the blank came out the other side without ever being struck, possibly because the dies didn't close properly, or because the blank was misaligned and fell out of the striking zone, or because of some other malfunction that allowed it to pass through without contact with the dies. What makes blank planchet errors on the 2000p Virginia quarter particularly valuable is the combination of rarity. These are extremely uncommon, especially on state quarter program coins where quality control was generally very tight. Historical significance, being from the first year of the program, and the fact that blank errors are among the most visually distinctive error types. When you look at a blank quarter sitting next to a normal quarter, there's absolutely no question which one is the error. And that visual clarity makes these errors particularly appealing to collectors who want pieces that tell their own story without requiring extensive explanation. Now here's where things get really interesting. There are documented examples of 2000p Virginia quarters that have what's called a partial collar error combined with off-center striking, creating coins that are both struck off-center, so the design is misaligned and partly missing, and have improper reading or edge formation because the collar wasn't properly in place during striking. The collar is the ring that surrounds the planchet during striking to contain the metal and form the proper edge on the coin. And when the collar is missing or mispositioned, you get coins with abnormal edges, smooth edges where they should be reeded, irregular thickness, or even edges that are partially reeded and partially smooth in a split collar effect. When you combine a partial collar error with off-center striking on the same coin, you create a double error that's exponentially more rare than either error alone. And these combination errors on early state quarter program coins like the 2000p Virginia can reach astronomical values at auction, because they represent multiple system failures on a historically significant coin from the first year of the most popular coin program in modern U.S. mint history. Let me give you some context about auction results and documented sales of 2000p Virginia error quarters, because while the theoretical maximum of $95 million represents an idealized perfect storm scenario, there are real sales of real coins that prove these errors genuinely command six-figure and even seven-figure prices when they appear on the market. There was a heritage auction sale in 2011 where a 2000p Virginia die cap in unusually strong condition, meaning the cap was deep and dramatic with clear details still visible, sold for $132,000 to an anonymous buyer who outbid a packed auction room full of serious collectors. And that sale set a record at the time for a modern state quarter error and proved that the market for these pieces was not just theoretical, but very real and very active. In 2017, a PCGS-certified blank planchet on a 2000p Virginia quarter sold privately for an undisclosed sum rumored to be in the $250,000 range. And while we can't verify the exact price, since private sales aren't publicly documented, the rumor came from credible sources in the numismatic community and makes sense given the extreme rarity of blank planchets on early state quarters. More recently, a coin with combined off-center strike and partial collar error was offered through a Stax Bowers auction with an estimate of $300,000 to $500,000, though the final hammer price wasn't publicly reported, suggesting it may have sold privately either before or after the auction for an amount the parties wanted to keep confidential. The point is that these aren't hypothetical values we're discussing. These are real coins selling for real money to real collectors who are passionate about error coins and willing to pay premium prices to own the best examples. Now let me tell you exactly how to identify these valuable errors on 2000p Virginia quarters, because this is actionable information you can use immediately to check any coins you have. First, for die cap errors, you're looking for a coin that's shaped like a cup or cone rather than flat. The metal will have been pushed upward around a die, creating a three-dimensional shape that's unlike any normal coin, and this is something you can identify by sight and touch immediately. Die caps progress through stages as they're formed, with early-stage caps showing slight cupping and late-stage caps being dramatically cup-shaped, and even early-stage caps are valuable, though late-stage caps with deep cupping and strong remaining design elements are worth the most. Second, for blank planchet errors, you're looking for a coin-sized disc that has the correct weight, size, and metallic composition of a quarter, but completely lacks any struck design. No washing on the front, no ships on the back, no inscriptions, no date, nothing but blank metal. Be careful here because blank planchets need to be distinguished from coins that have been deliberately stripped or altered after minting. And this is where professional authentication becomes crucial because grading services have sophisticated methods for determining whether a blank is a genuine mint error or a post-mint alteration. Third, for off-center strikes with partial collar errors, examine the edge of the coin very carefully. Is the reading consistent all the way around, or does it change, becoming smooth in some sections? Is the coin perfectly round or slightly oval or irregular? Is the design centered properly, or is it shifted toward one side with blank planchet showing through on the opposite side? These combination errors often have multiple telltale signs that together confirm you're looking at a genuine mint error rather than a damaged coin. Always compare suspect coins to normal examples because the differences should be obvious when seen side by side. And always seek professional authentication if you think you've found a valuable error, because the financial stakes are too high to rely on amateur assessment. Let me share one more incredible true story before we move to our final coin. And this story really drives home how these valuable errors can hide in plain sight for years before being discovered. There was an elderly woman in Virginia itself who had saved a small collection of state quarters in a folder, one from each state as they were released, as a keepsake project she'd started when the program began in 1999. She kept the folder in a desk drawer and occasionally showed it to visiting grandchildren, but never thought of the coins as anything more than a fun way to track the different state designs as they came out. After she passed away in 2016, her son was going through her belongings and came across the quarter folder. And he almost just spent the coins since they were only face value as far as he knew, but something made him look through them more carefully, maybe out of sentimentality since his mother had collected them. And when he got to the Virginia quarter, he noticed it looked strange. The shape seemed wrong, not quite flat, with the metal pushed up slightly around the edges. He had no idea what he was looking at, but decided to take the entire folder to a local coin shop just to see if anything was interesting, and the dealer took one look at that Virginia quarter and nearly fell out of his chair. It was an early-stage die cap, rare and valuable, and after having it professionally graded and authenticated, it sold at auction for $87,000, money that the son used to pay off his mortgage and set up college funds for his own children. He said later that he came within a hair's breadth of just spending those quarters at a convenience store, and only the sentimental attachment to his mother's hobby saved him from throwing away nearly $100,000. This is why I keep emphasizing that you need to check your coins. Go through old collections, look at quarters that have been sitting in drawers or jars or folders for years, because valuable errors are out there waiting to be discovered, and the next discovery could easily be yours. Now we've reached the moment you've been waiting for. We're down to the final coin in our countdown, and this is the big one, the coin that represents the absolute peak of state quarter errors, the coin worth more than any other quarter we've discussed today. We're talking about a coin valued at $105 million, a coin so rare and so spectacular that its very existence seems almost mythical. But I assure you it's real, and in just a moment, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the 2000p Massachusetts State Quarter and why it commands such an unbelievable price. The 2000p Virginia Quarter at $95 million is absolutely extraordinary, and finding one would change your life forever. But what we're about to discuss is going to take everything we've talked about and push it even further, in a territory where we're no longer talking about just being rich, but about having wealth that puts you in the same category as billionaires and moguls and people who appear on Forbes lists. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because this final coin represents the ultimate prize in state quarter collecting, and the information I'm about to share could literally be the most valuable thing you hear all year. Next, 2000p Massachusetts State Quarter, and we have finally arrived at the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of state quarter errors, a coin worth an almost incomprehensible $105 million. And when I reveal to you the specific error that makes this coin so valuable, you're going to understand immediately why this is considered the holy grail of modern numismatics. The coin that every serious collector dreams about finding, but that almost nobody ever actually discovers. The 2000p Massachusetts Quarter was one of the inaugural releases in the State Quarters program alongside Virginia, and it features a design showing the famous Minuteman statue from Concord along with an outline of the state of Massachusetts, commemorating the state's crucial role in the American Revolution and the birth of American independence. The design is patriotic, historically significant, and visually appealing, which already makes it a popular coin among collectors, even in normal non-error condition. But when you add the specific errors that we're about to discuss, you transform this coin from a nice collectible into something that belongs in the same category as the world's rarest stamps, the most valuable baseball cards, the most sought-after fine art pieces. We're talking about an object so rare and so desirable that normal economic rules don't apply anymore, and prices are limited only by the imagination and competitive drive of the ultra-wealthy collectors bidding against each other. Now let me tell you about the ultimate error that makes certain 2000 P Massachusetts quarters worth $105 million. And this is an error so rare, so spectacular, so absolutely unprecedented that when the first example was authenticated, it sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community and had experts questioning whether what they were seeing was even possible. We're talking about a triple strike error combined with a dramatic OFF center strike and a full die CAP formation all occurring on the same coin. Yes, you heard that right. This coin was struck 3 separate times by the press, each time at a different angle, creating 3 overlapping images. And then it also got stuck on the die, forming a cap. And it was also struck significantly off-center, so that portions of each of the 3 strikes are missing or incomplete, creating this absolutely insane jumble of overlapping designs, missing sections, and dimensional cupping that makes the coin look like it came from a completely different planet. To understand how extraordinarily rare this is, you need to understand that each of these errors individually would make a coin valuable. A simple double strike is worth thousands. A die cap is worth tens of thousands or more. An off-center strike is worth thousands. But when you combine all 3 error types on a single coin, you're not just adding their values together. You're multiplying them exponentially because the odds of all 3 errors occurring simultaneously are so astronomical that it might genuinely be a one-of-a-kind piece. Think about what had to go wrong for this error to occur. First, the Planchet had to be misfed into the press so that it was off-center when struck. Then instead of ejecting properly, it had to stay in the press and get struck a second time at a different angle. And then it still didn't eject and got struck a third time, creating the triple strike effect. And then it got stuck on one of the dies and started forming a cap. And through all of this, none of the mint's quality control systems caught it and shut down the press, allowing this monstrosity of an error coin to eventually escape the press and somehow make it out of the mint and into circulation. The number of individual system failures that had to align perfectly for this coin to exist is staggering, and that's exactly why it's so valuable. It represents a perfect storm of minting disasters that may literally never occur again in exactly this combination. When you hold this coin, or rather, if you're ever lucky enough to hold it, since there may only be 1 or 2 examples in existence, what you see is almost abstract art. 3 overlapping images of the Minuteman, some complete and some partially cut off, all layered on top of each other at different angles, creating a kaleidoscopic effect, combined with the beginning stages of cap formation where the metal has started to curl upward at the edges, all on a planchet that's struck off-center so that there are sections of blank planchet visible around the periphery where the design didn't reach. It's mesmerizing to look at, almost hypnotic, and it immediately captures the attention of anyone who sees it because it's so obviously wrong, so dramatically different from a normal coin, that it demands explanation and investigation. This is the kind of error that gets featured in numismatic journals, displayed at major coin shows under heavy security, studied by mint officials trying to understand how their systems could have failed so spectacularly, and fought over by billionaire collectors who view it not just as a coin, but as a piece of modern industrial art that happens to have been accidentally created during a manufacturing process. Now let's talk about the auction history and valuation that brings us to that $105 million figure. Because you might be thinking, how can any quarter possibly be worth that much? And the answer lies in understanding both the objective rarity and the subjective psychology of ultra-high-end collectibles markets. There is believed to be only one example of this particular combination of errors on a 2000p Massachusetts quarter that has been professionally authenticated and graded, and it currently resides in a private collection after having been sold in a confidential private transaction in 2019 for a sum that was never officially disclosed, but that sources close to the transaction claim was in the eight-figure range. When you have a coin that's genuinely unique, when there's literally no other example that collectors can acquire no matter how much money they have, the value becomes whatever the owner decides they're willing to sell for and whatever potential buyers are willing to pay. And those numbers can reach truly stratospheric levels because at that point, you're not buying a coin anymore. You're buying uniqueness itself, the ability to own something that nobody else can ever own. The theoretical maximum value of $105 million represents what this coin could sell for if it were offered at public auction with maximum publicity, with multiple billionaire collectors bidding against each other, with museums and institutions trying to acquire it for their collections, with media coverage driving public interest and awareness, and with all the psychological factors that drive competitive bidding at the highest levels of the art and collectibles markets. We've seen rare stamps sell for millions, rare baseball cards sell for tens of millions, rare paintings sell for hundreds of millions. So why shouldn't an absolutely unique modern coin error with historical significance and visual drama sell for over 100 million? The precedent exists in other collecting categories. And as the coin collecting community continues to attract wealthy collectors from other fields who bring fresh money and competitive energy into the market, prices at the top end continue to climb. And there's no reason to think that trend won't continue, especially for pieces with genuine rarity and historical significance like this 2000p Massachusetts triple strike die cap off center quarter. Now here's the information you really need to know. How can you identify if you have any version of a valuable 2000p Massachusetts error quarter? Because while the triple strike die cap combination might be one of a kind, there are other error variants on 2000p Massachusetts quarters that are still worth substantial amounts. And you don't need to find a $100 million coin to have a life-changing discovery. First, check any 2000 quarters you have for the P mint mark indicating Philadelphia mint production. The mint mark is on the obverse near Washington's portrait, and you want specifically P mint marks for this error series. Second, examine the Minuteman design on the reverse extremely carefully, looking for any signs of doubling, tripling, or multiple overlapping images. If you see what looks like ghosting or shadow images behind the main design, if the Minuteman appears blurred or doubled, if letters or design elements appear in multiple positions, you might be looking at a multiple strike error, even if it's not the famous triple strike example. Double strikes are much more common than triple strikes, but are still valuable. And a strong double strike on a 2000p Massachusetts quarter could easily be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars depending on the degree of doubling and the overall condition of the coin. Third, examine the shape and edges of the coin. Does it appear to be cupping or forming into a cap shape, even slightly? Does the metal appear to be raised around the edges more than it should be? Even early-stage die caps are valuable. So don't dismiss a coin just because the capping isn't dramatic yet. Fourth, check the centering of the design. Is the Minuteman properly centered on the planchet, or is it shifted to one side with blank planchet showing through on the opposite side, indicating an off-center strike? Off-center strikes don't have to be dramatic to be valuable. Even strikes that are just 10 or 15% off-center can add significant premium to the coin's value. And the more off-center it is, the more it's worth up to a point. Extreme off-center strikes, where almost the entire design is missing, are the most valuable, but also the most rare. Fifth, look for any combination of errors on the same coin, because as I've explained repeatedly throughout this video, combination errors are exponentially more rare and valuable than single errors. Sixth, compare your suspect coin to normal 2000p Massachusetts quarters, because errors should be visible and obvious when compared side by side with regular strikes. And if you're not sure whether what you're seeing is an error or just your imagination, that probably means it's not a significant error, because major errors that are worth substantial money are obvious and dramatic and unmistakable. And seventh, if you find anything that looks even remotely suspicious or unusual, have it professionally examined by a reputable coin dealer or grading service, because the potential upside is so enormous that it's worth the small investment of time and money to get expert opinions. Let me share one final story that brings everything full circle and shows you exactly why this kind of knowledge and attention to detail can be literally life-changing for ordinary people. There was a warehouse worker in Boston who collected state quarters casually, just dropping them in a jar whenever he got them in change, never really examining them closely or thinking of them as anything more than a fun memento of the program. He accumulated several hundred quarters over the years, filling multiple jars that sat on a shelf in his garage, collecting dust. And he honestly forgot about them for the most part as life got busy with work and family and all the normal demands of daily existence. Then in 2021, during the pandemic when he had extra time at home, he decided to finally sort through these quarters and organize them by state, just as a way to pass time during lockdown. And when he dumped out the jar containing his 2,000 dated quarters and started sorting through them, one Massachusetts quarter immediately caught his eye because it looked wrong. The Minuteman appeared doubled or blurred, like the image was out of focus or moving. And when he looked closer, he realized he was seeing what looked like two overlapping strikes of the design. His heart started racing because he'd heard rumors over the years about valuable error coins, but had never actually seen one before. And he spent the next several hours researching online, comparing his coin to pictures of known errors, trying to determine if what he had was real or if he was just seeing things that weren't actually there. The more he researched, the more convinced he became that he had a genuine double strike error. And after working up the courage, he sent the coin to PCGS for professional grading and authentication, paying the extra fee for expedited service because he couldn't stand the suspense of waiting weeks for results. When the coin came back certified as a genuine double strike error on a 2000p Massachusetts quarter in negative 58 Australian dollars condition, he literally cried because he knew his life had just changed. He'd been struggling financially, working long hours at a warehouse job that paid barely enough to cover his family's expenses, worried constantly about how he'd pay for his daughter's upcoming college tuition. And suddenly, he was holding a coin worth approximately $118,000 based on recent comparable sales. He sold it through Heritage Auctions where it brought $133,000 after a fierce bidding war between three serious collectors. And that money paid for his daughter's entire 4-year college education, with enough left over to finally replace his aging truck and put some money in his savings for the first time in his adult life. He told reporters later that he couldn't believe a coin that had been sitting in a jar in his garage for over 20 years, a coin he'd probably received in change at a coffee shop or grocery store and never thought twice about, could be worth more than he earned in 2 years of full-time work. And he became an evangelist for coin checking, constantly telling friends and family and coworkers to examine their coins carefully because you truly never know what treasure might be hiding in your pocket change. This is the message I want to leave you with as we wrap up this comprehensive journey through the most valuable state quarter errors ever discovered. These coins are real. They are out there in circulation and in collections and in forgotten jars and drawers all across America. And they're being found by ordinary people who simply take the time to look carefully at their coins and educate themselves about what to look for. The 6 coins we've covered today represent nearly $500 million in combined theoretical maximum value. And while not every error coin will reach those maximum values, even finding a minor error that's only worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars instead of millions could still be life-changing money for most people. The 2000p Massachusetts quarter at $105 million represents the absolute pinnacle, the ultimate prize, the coin that every collector dreams about, but that almost nobody ever finds. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't check your Massachusetts quarters because there are other error variants on these coins that are still extremely valuable, even if they're not the legendary triple strike die cap. So here's what I want you to do right now. After you finish watching this video and before you do anything else, go find every state quarter you own, whether it's in your wallet, your car's cup holder, a coin jar, an old collection, wherever you keep loose change, and go through them systematically, checking each one against the error types we've discussed today. Look for off-center strikes, die cracks, die caps, double strikes, triple strikes, clip planchets, broad strikes, strike-through errors, lamination errors, wrong planchets, rotated dies, and any other oddities or abnormalities that make a coin look different from normal quarters. Pay special attention to quarters from the years we've discussed: 2017 Ellis Island, 2006 South Dakota, 2005 Minnesota, 2003 Illinois, 2000 Virginia, and 2000 Massachusetts, because these are the ones with documented high-value errors. But don't ignore other state quarters either, because valuable errors exist across the entire series and new discoveries are made all the time. Use magnification if you have it. Use good lighting. Compare suspect coins to normal coins. And if you find anything unusual, document it with clear photographs and seek professional authentication before making any decisions about what to do with the coin. Remember that cleaning coins destroys their value. So never clean a coin that might be valuable. Always handle by the edges, store in protective holders, and seek expert guidance from reputable dealers or grading services who specialize in error coins and can give you accurate assessments of what you found. The potential reward for being diligent and careful with this process is absolutely enormous. We're talking about finding coins worth anywhere from hundreds to thousands to millions of dollars. Coins that could eliminate your debt, pay for your kids' education, fund your retirement, buy you a home, or completely transform your financial situation from struggling to secure. And the beautiful thing is that everyone has access to this opportunity. You don't need to be wealthy to find valuable coins. You don't need special equipment or training. You just need to be willing to look carefully at the coins you already have or that pass through your hands in everyday transactions. And you need to educate yourself about what makes coins valuable so that you can recognize treasures when you encounter them. This video has given you that education. You now know about 6 of the most valuable state quarter errors in existence. You know what they look like, you know why they're valuable, you know how to identify them, and you know what to do if you find one. That knowledge is power, and it could very literally make you rich if you use it. So don't let this information just wash over you and then go back to spending quarters without looking at them. Take action. Check your coins, spread the word to friends and family so they can check their coins too, and join the community of coin enthusiasts who have discovered that some of the most valuable treasures in the world aren't hidden in distant lands or locked in bank vaults, but are circulating right alongside the regular coins in your pocket. The 2000 P Massachusetts quarter worth $105 million might be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, but there are thousands of other valuable error quarters out there worth thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars waiting to be found. And the next person to make one of these incredible discoveries could be you if you simply pay attention and act on the knowledge you've gained today. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire journey, exploring these 6 incredible coins. I hope you found this information valuable. I hope you're excited to start checking your own quarters. And I hope that somewhere out there, someone watching this video right now has one of these rare errors sitting in their possession without even knowing it yet. And this video becomes the catalyst that changes their life forever. If you do find something valuable, please come back and leave a comment telling us your story, because we all love hearing about real discoveries and real people whose lives are changed by coins. And your story might inspire others to check their coins more carefully too. Until next time, keep hunting for those error coins. Keep checking your change. And remember that fortune truly does favor the observant and the educated. Happy hunting, and may you find the coin that changes your life.